For more on this story, we're joined by Hussein Ibish, who is Senior Resident Scholar at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington. Thanks very much for speaking to France 24, Hussein.
Very welcome. Thank you.
So these are complex elections for those who don't follow the region closely. Hamas remains the
Yeah,
main Palestinian power in Gaza, but they're not on the ballot. Why is that?
right. Well, officially, they don't want to participate. They are sort of taking a back seat, preferring to run affiliated candidates, people who are known to be supportive of them rather than their actual membership. And it's a kind of an echo of the tactic that they used to get a majority in the Palestinian parliament in the last major elections that your correspondent was just referring to. The I would say 42%. It was described in the report as a landslide. It wasn't really a landslide, but it was a big victory. Hamas and Hamas affiliated candidates got about 44% of the seats in parliament, and that gave them a very solid majority compared to any other party. So, that is a tactic that they're familiar with using. They would have on their own probably only reached 25%, but they managed to get to 44% by using affiliates.
But let's be clear, these are municipal local elections. That's unlike the
Right.
ones we saw 20 years ago, which had a lot more significance, would you say?
Correct. Oh, I would. I mean, I think all this does is give us a barometer of where Palestinian public opinion might be. It's better than an opinion poll in the sense that this is what people want to commit to. And so anytime you have an actual election, it's much better than a poll or a survey, which generally are efforts to kind of predict what an actual gauge of popular sentiment would say, and so it's kind of a super poll, if you like, at the national level. But you're right; it's not a national election. No.
Now, we're seeing in the pictures there that we're playing footage from
Yeah.
Gaza actually today. And I'd read
Mm.
before coming into work that there were reports that ballot boxes, ink, basic things to conduct this election might not have even reached Gaza. Israel hadn't made it clear whether they had allowed these
Yeah.
materials into Gaza or not. But there, clearly, we can see entire huts set up for voting, polling booths. Seems like they've got everything they need.
It does seem that way, and I think that one of the things that's going on here is the Palestinian Authority is trying to demonstrate that it can conduct not just basic services for people, but also actually conduct an election. And I think that's, however limited the areas are, it's still significant, and it's in that sense a show of strength for the PA. Now, the results, if they are heavily in favor of Hamas or something like that, would the whole process would backfire on the Palestinian Authority. But they have to do something to kind of remind the world of their national leadership and reinscribe it and instantiate it in some practical way. And this is one way of doing it. And it's I think it's good for the Palestinians, and the more elections they have, the better.
So you're essentially saying that this is more or less a vote of confidence in Mahmoud Abbas, in Fatah. How do you see it going?
Well, that's the question. So we don't know yet. I think the PA ought to do pretty well, but the whole point of an election like this, in terms of beyond its municipal local significance, its national significance is going to be precisely that it won't reflect what someone like me or anybody else can guess about the outcome. It will be the outcome, and we won't have to speculate. And that's sort of the whole point of it. So I don't know. And I think it's best to say that, wait and see, and we'll judge based on the outcome,
Yeah.
where, Palestinians are. And also the fact that one of the municipalities is in Gaza and one is in the West Bank, will be an interesting contrast
Now we've got
potentially,
one and
or demonstrate unity. Sorry.
So we've got mentioned the West Bank there. We've got 1.5 million registered voters in the West Bank, but it's an incredibly difficult time for Palestinians there now because of things we've been reporting throughout the day. Is it going to be difficult to get people out to vote? It's presumably going to impact the number of people voting.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I don't think so. In the West, I think Palestinians are going to come out and vote in the West Bank. This is a good opportunity for them. And you're right. Life is really hard in the West Bank right now. Settlers are increasingly violent with utter impunity. And Israel has been impeding everything, not like in Gaza, where the whole place is blockaded, but, it's very difficult for the Palestinian Authority to function because the current Israeli government is so hostile to anything Palestinian. They have been for a long time. And then after October 7, 2023, in the Hamas-led attack from Gaza, which had nothing to do with the West Bank, but still it ushered in an intensified form of ruthlessness and disregard on the part of Israeli authorities. And they're in the process of creating a law for the West Bank, which will basically mean that any Palestinian who kills an Israeli settler, because that's who they are, and other Israelis don't really go there, but any Palestinian who kills a settler will get the death penalty and be hanged within 180 days. And that does not apply to Israelis who harm or kill Palestinians. So it's a selective death penalty. It's just the latest example of the kind of apartheid that is settling in on the West Bank. And I tend to think that this election is a very good way for Palestinians to reassert themselves in that regard as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the analysis I've been reading suggests that the shadow of what happened after the last major elections 20 years ago, that will be weighing on people as well, and maybe could deter them. But do you buy that?
No, I don't. I think it will be well attended. My guess is that people are going to want to vote. It's something they can do. It's proactive. It's, it ought to be psychologically and sociologically good for the Palestinians to be able to do this. And I think that's likely how it's going to play out. What it might do is set the stage for a bigger, more ambitious national poll at some point. But that would have to be done almost in coordination with Israel, especially in Gaza. And I just don't think the Israelis have any interest in something like this. I think it happens in spite of them rather than because of them. And that's going to make a national version of this difficult. But if this poll is conducted very successfully, whatever the outcome, but if it goes well in terms of the actual mechanics of voting, counting, and it's free and fair, and the outcome is widely accepted, then I think that does really serve potentially as a test run and a first step towards a national poll. If someone can, if the U.S. can pressure Israel into allowing it in the West Bank, and even in Gaza, it's possible, but you would have to have Israeli cooperation there.
Hussein Ibish from the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington, thank you very much for your time today.